Welcome to Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. Thank you so much for joining me today as we're going to discuss the Venus retrograde energies that will be unfolding over the course of a few months as Venus stations retrograde on March 1st at 10 degrees and 50 minutes of Aries, and she will travel back to 24 degrees of Pisces, where she stations direct on April 13th. Now, I'm recording this show in February 10th, and so here we're going to focus on Venus preparing for retrograde, more of the specifics of how the energies will unfold, the themes to be aware of, where to have a heads up so that you can navigate this Venus retrograde with intentionality, and also some of the important degree points that she will be traversing to keep an eye on for yourself, especially in the Aries and late degrees of Pisces energies in your chart. This is part 1 on the topic, and I will have part 2 and part 3 for you in March and April as we move through the different phases here of this Venus retrograde journey. So to begin, you'll want to identify in your astrology chart the house or houses where you have 24 degrees of Pisces to 10 degrees 50 minutes of Aries. We could say 11 degrees of Aries, as this is where the Venus retrograde is going to be working with you to look at areas of life to slow down, think it through, become more intentional, and ensure that what you want is in alignment with who you are now. And to be aware that this is also the house or houses in your chart where you are renovating yourself. You're actually going deeper into who you are and what you need now. In the astrological world, Venus is the lover, receiver, magnetizer. She creates based on what she loves and adores. She's where we find ourselves gravitating towards what we want, what we're attracted to. Venus themes in our lives rule over beauty, shopping, possessions, appearance, style, creativity, the arts, what you want to own and pull into your experience and your existence. Venus is connected with love, partnerships, relationships, and connections. Because she is feminine, she also rules over our relationships with women, friendships, sisters, partners, lovers, dates. She highlights what you enjoy doing with your free time, your favorite activities, life pleasures, hobbies, where you go at the end of the day that feels good to you and is an energy that you want to experience regularly. At a foundational level, Venus is connected to our self-confidence, our self-esteem, and our self-value. So when we have a Venus retrograde, we are now reevaluating all of these areas and needs in our lives. And in Aries, it's much more personal. Venus is considered to be in her detriment in Aries, and that's because she's in the territory of Mars. Aries is cardinal fire, initiator, independent, sovereign, a leader. She wants to do things on her own and in her own way. She acts quickly, and she's comfortable on her own. And so you can see how this puts into play different types of relational dynamics, because here we have a Venus who isn't necessarily concerned about what others want or need. She's focused on herself. And when she is in retrograde, this is where we can become much more intentional around the Venus in Aries expressions, as well as looking at what do you need that is true for you now. Venus also magnifies. She highlights when she's retrograde who you are, what you like, what you enjoy. So this can be a period of big change where you realize, I don't want that anymore. I don't like that. That doesn't resonate. I don't want to do that. I'm not interested in that, whatever that is for you. But this is where we're going to have some significant resets based on who you are now, what you desire, and what you want. So Venus being in Aries can be very subjective and very much consumed with herself. She can be too impatient and too impulsive. These are some of the lower expressions of Venus in Aries, where she moves too fast and she doesn't understand how things will affect others, or she doesn't consider a long-term perspective. I find that when Venus is in retrograde, especially in the fire signs, she's able to tame the flames. She's able to consciously work with what she truly wants, and this can lead to greater wisdom, intentionality, and discernment. And that would be some of the key themes here with Venus retrograde in Aries, is to heighten your wisdom around your personal energy field, to be more discerning about what you're moving towards, what you're creating, what you want, because you might realize it isn't really something you want to stay committed to for the long term. It isn't something that you want to keep repeating. It's not a pattern you want to unconsciously engage in. So this is where Venus in Aries is going to be slowing down. Now, as we approach the retrograde, which again begins on March 1st, there's a period of time that the universe is highlighting for you what you want to start because it really calls to you versus what you are unconsciously starting that isn't really true for you anymore. So stay aware of that. Understand too that Venus retrograde in Aries is not about quick results. It isn't about immediate gratification. It's, again, tempering the flames, taming the desire for immediate gratification, and allowing yourself to continue to trust what is true for you. You won't miss. You won't miss it. It will still have your name on it. And after the retrograde, it'll come back around, or rather you'll be drawn to it again. And now you'll be ready to create it with a new sense of personal value, personal confidence, and really honoring this is an alignment for me. I feel it, I know it, I trust it, but that's part of what's going to play out over this Venus retrograde that begins March 1st. So as we're preparing for retrograde, as Venus is preparing for retrograde, she's covering the territory in your chart that's going to be reworked. Now, some of the retrograde words that we apply to Venus, they're different than the words we use for retrograde Mercury or retrograde Mars. With Venus being about our value systems, what we receive, what we love, what we want to create, the retrograde words are revalue, rediscover, renovate, redecorate, retract, revisit. You can see that these words are less cerebral than Mercury retrograde words. They're also meant to be more personal, especially in Aries. So this could be a time when you are meant to truly sit with some things and understand what is in higher alignment with who you are. And it's not based on that unconscious Aries energies. Rather, you are reconnecting, another Venus retrograde word, reconnecting with yourself and what truly has value to you now. The retrograde cycle, which is the slowdown, is going to ask you to sit with it, to sit in the fiery enthusiasm or motivation that you're feeling, to sit in the truth of your heart's desires and to really understand, is this true for me now? Again, we're practicing deeper discernment because this Venus in Aries is at the beginning of the zodiac wheel. Aries begins a cycle. So what cycle are you ready to begin that's in true alignment with who you are now? And by the way, this has more gusto to it because Venus is going to be traveling across the eclipse point 3 times. So let's take a look at this here. We have an Aries solar eclipse occurring on March 29th at 8 degrees 53 minutes of Aries. And Venus is going to move across this same degree point 3 times. February 19th and 20th, March 12th, and May 13th. Now, Venus moving across an eclipse point activates it, but she's not a trigger like Mars is a trigger. When Mars moves across an eclipse point, he brings the wow, the shazam, the action, the anger. But Venus moves through and she wants to typically soothe, but in Aries, she wants to get the energy moving. She wants to create. She wants there to be an outlet for her self-expression, for what she wants to do and move towards. Venus is going to interact with this eclipse point and bring in new levels of self-awareness for her to further integrate. Venus is moving through a big rebirthing cycle during this particular retrograde. She is going to be receiving new downloads and new understandings about who she is now, what she desires, what she wants, and the changes that are needed in order for her to embody that frequency. So the sense of self is shifting, and you can feel this within your sense of confidence, again, self-esteem, what you desire, what you want. This can be reflected, of course, in your connections, friendships, love relationships, and partnerships. Venus retrograde can bring back around people that you're meant to reconnect with, those who share a similar frequency, especially those who have been growing and evolving. The Venus energy seeks connection, and it's how we want to create exchanges with others. For others who have been doing their work, who have been understanding more about their true self, there is an elevation here that occurs, and that allows the reconnection to happen. It's all energetics, right? Conversely, if there hasn't been a frequency match, if there are other people who don't share your same interests, who aren't on the same wavelength, who aren't on your same trajectory or path, those relationships fall away. So Venus retrograde highlights relationship changes. This includes, again, friendships, sisters, people that you work with. This can highlight those that you want to hang out with, that you enjoy, as well as those that you don't. Venus in Aries can be fights, disagreements, where you're not on the same page and neither wants to consider the other's perspective or viewpoint. This is where the feminine energies can be in a state of louder disagreements, quicker to anger, bottled up feelings come out and are expressed. There can just be more discord and lack of harmony with Venus retrograde in Aries. And of course, it all comes down to the intentionality, discernment, and wisdom, where if you're seeing what is not lining up for you, perhaps which friendships are out of sync, which partnerships or love connections are not working, then the higher path of Venus retrograde in Aries is to go into your own personal journey and to get to the heart of what you're really feeling and how to manage it and express it responsibly and maturely, how to take ownership over it. And that is one of the higher expressions of Venus in Aries, is the personal ownership of what you need and what you want. For many people, you might find that you are getting to the heart of your true love language, or what you really want to share and create with another, and maybe you're understanding what you haven't fully owned in yourself, or you haven't fully shared, because that Venus in Aries can keep things to herself. She doesn't always open up or let others know what she wants or what she needs from them. So there is a big internal process going on for everyone here that will be experienced at all different levels of consciousness and awareness, but we're meant to stay in a place of personal self-love and acceptance. And so again, as Venus works with this Aries solar eclipse point 3 times, she's going to feel this surge of energy within her, a surge of self-awareness and new knowledge, a sense of this is who I am now, or this is what I deserve, this is what I want, this is what I want to create in a new way, perhaps for the first time in her life. And that's because that Aries energy is always about new beginnings. So you could have some really big, significant relationship shifts going on here, where you're understanding this is what matters to me now. This is how I'm showing up in a connection. This is what I need from others. This is what I want to begin in this new cycle, because it honors my own path as well as what I've been through. So Venus is understanding where she's been and also becoming more intentional about what she creates going forward. So during the retrograde, you could get many messages, downloads, and insights into what karma you've been completing and ending. The retrogrades are also about the return of energies, especially from previous lifetimes, for you to consider if it's in alignment with what you need and value now. So during this time, yes, there are more breakups, especially when we're working with eclipse points. And there are more developments where things come together quite fast because that's how the Aries energy moves. So for those who might have quick breakups or quick splits, maybe there's fast endings. Maybe there's something in a friendship or with a sister. It comes to blows and it just plays out fast. Then there's time as Venus moves through this full cycle to reconsider what is yours, to shift and change, and what is not yours. There's also the energy of things coming together quickly for new starts, fast new beginnings, like immediate takeoffs that sync up and unfold, especially because both individuals are ready. So again, working with an eclipse point accelerates and even magnifies the energies. Because Venus is retrograde in Aries, though, the wisdom is to not move too fast. That even if something were to take off at a fast pace, it's still important to be aware of the ramifications of that, as well as any practical elements that are involved. It is fascinating here too that Venus is currently the ruler of Uranus and Taurus, since Venus rules Taurus. So during this retrograde, she's also ruling over the fast-moving, shocking developments of Uranus and Taurus, and that is also going to be influential during this Venus retrograde cycle. So just out of the gate here, with the few things we've covered about how this Venus in Aries retrograde can unfold, it's working with the eclipse points and ruling over Uranus and Taurus. This can be shocking connections, unexpected partnerships, big power couples, new beginnings in partnerships, love, friendships. And at a deeper core level, all of this relates to how the root chakra has been reprogrammed. Aries relates to our primal senses, the areas where we feel safe in ourselves, safe in loving and accepting ourselves. And so for many people, you could have a rising of personal confidence and strength that feels more grounded, safe, and secure in that root chakra. And you could be experiencing a powerful rebirth here, especially since this is the first time Venus has been retrograde in Aries since 2017. So let's take a look at what happened 8 years ago when Venus was last retrograde in Aries. That happened March 4th to April 15th, 2017, where she traveled from 13 degrees of Aries back to 26 degrees of Pisces. And this is also when Venus had a conjunction to Chiron in Pisces. That was really the only big interaction she had during that previous retrograde in 2017. So she was working with Chiron in Pisces at the very end of Pisces, 26, 27 degrees, supporting the healing process and what you needed to let go of, allow, surrender. This would have been more emotional, personal, and sensitive. This would have been a time when Venus was more private, reserved, and working on her own healing path. So the last time that she was retrograde in this area of your chart, there was that focus on Chiron in Pisces, allowing you to truly feel what was going on in your world while also searching for the spiritual meaning of it and understanding, what is this about? What am I meant to learn? And knowing that you were possibly doing some bigger healing work. Now, Venus goes retrograde in Aries every 8 years. So again, 2017 was the last time. Before that, it was 2009 when she was 15 degrees of Aries retrograde back to 29 degrees of Pisces. And then again, 8 years prior in 2001 when she was retrograde at 17 degrees of Aries to 1 degree of Aries. And because it happens every 8 years, you get the gist here that this house or houses in your chart where you have these degrees of Aries are where you've been consistently reworking your sense of self, your personal value system, what you want and what you need in order to feel good about yourself, to love yourself and accept who you are. So I hope those dates perhaps can highlight any themes that have come up for you. I also feel that with Venus and Aries, Aries being that first infantile energy of the zodiac, it's where we're always learning about ourselves. It's where we have to have the courage to do something new, to explore it, to say, do I want this? Am I good at this? Is this something I can develop and take forward? And this could be a time period when you're learning a lot about who you are and just playing this openness of, let me just experiment here. Let me try this out. Let me see if I enjoy it. And that's one of the better ways to work with Venus in Aries when she has an extended stay in Aries, is to be experimental, to know that there will be restarts and resets, to not expect a lot of yourself. But the Venus in Aries does have to tame themes because she can become overly competitive, unnecessarily competitive. She can be out to prove herself that she has to be the best or be number one. And that actually highlights some of that more mature or insecure energy where she sees others as competition. Now, in the higher realms, that's never the case. The only thing that you can truly control or work with is yourself. Being better at who you are, knowing yourself more, understanding that there is no competition. There's only being who you are and doing your best every day, each day. So part of this Venus in Aries retrograde is looking at how you're truly loving yourself without any competition and any comparison. There's nothing to prove. There's nothing you have to be number one at. You just have to love yourself more and allow that confidence to be what you invest in and what carries you forward. Now, you could see these energies flare up in others. With the Venus in Aries in retrograde, there could be more perceptions of competition, being number one. All of that can show up here in the mix, but that never serves long term. And in fact, it can steer you away from what you really want to embrace and invest in. So a wiser Venus in Aries is going to understand what's worth her time, energy, and attention, where she can invest in what she truly loves and wants and not have it be about anything else. So as we're preparing for the retrograde to begin on March 4th, this is a good time to look at how your internal primal energies are functioning, to look at where you feel the energies coming up that give you an adrenaline rush, that get your blood moving, even your blood boiling. This is the energy of gut instinct reactions. Having a sense of, I want that feels quite primal and is based in your innate creation abilities. It's also looking at your instinctual fight or flight reactions or responses, as these are all energies that Aries rules. Aries also rules the head, eyes, skull, arteries, blood vessels, rashes on the skin, flare-ups, acne, skin infections, cuts, because Aries is also connected to swords and fast-moving injuries, rosacea, inflammation. All of these are areas to be aware of in your body, in yourself, during this particular Venus retrograde in Aries. Now, she can bring about new healing ointments, new solutions. She can direct you to what you overlooked or never considered that might help with the tempering of these energies or solving them. When the body is holding a lot of inflammation, for example, that can have many symptoms and effects, especially over time. So there could be something that you're directed to solve or understand in terms of working with your energy in a whole new way, how to work with the cause of inflammation or the settling of the adrenaline rush or blood boiling. There are always ways to calm energy. And I feel like this particular Venus retrograde can bring about a lot of healing, reprogramming, and physical shifts so that you can maintain your physical energy, which is Aries, while also looking at what needs to be improved or fixed. Now, Venus retrograde is also never a good time for anything that you need to do surgically, if possible. Not a good time for those Botox treatments or anything involving heat, especially on the skin. It's not a good time for even some beauty treatments that would bring in too much redness, rash, heat. You get the idea, because there can be errors and things can go wrong, allergic reactions, etc. Venus is going to be re-entering Pisces on March 27th. And when she is retrograde in Pisces, she's going to have a very big journey in those Pisces realms where she is exalted, because she's going to have another connection with Neptune in Pisces, the North Node in Pisces, and eventually Saturn in Pisces. So her journey in Pisces is going to be very significant for what she is learning and remembering, especially at a soul level. So I'll be discussing more of that in part 2 and part 3 of this Venus retrograde series. But in this particular episode, we're focusing on Venus preparing for retrograde, as well as the themes that come up while she's in Aries. Now, these themes can come up when she's both direct and retrograde in Aries. And I see an interesting formula with Venus retrograde in Aries as well. Now, as I mentioned, she is considered in her detriment in Aries because she's in the fast-moving, impatient, masculine Mars territory. But when she's retrograde in a sign of her detriment, she actually becomes wiser and more intentional. The retrograde supports her in slowing down, thinking it through, remaining intentional, considering outcomes, and not rushing full speed ahead at everything that she wants. She is more likely to ponder and assess what is in alignment for her and what is not. So that would be one of the benefits of Venus retrograde in Aries here, especially March 1st until March 27th. Now, the Venus retrograde is typically around 40 days. That's how long the retrograde lasts. And so it's interesting when we sync this up with other narratives and stories that highlights the significance of 40 days and 40 nights. The number 40 is quite prominent in the Bible. So it's worth mentioning that for every period of time that 40 days is referenced, it could very well pertain to a Venus retrograde cycle. Not necessarily Venus retrograde in Aries, as Venus could have been retrograde in any other sign, but the period of time, 40 days and 40 nights, comes up multiple times in many of these narratives. It's referenced that Noah experienced rain for 40 days and 40 nights, that Moses and the ancient Hebrews were in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, that in the New Testament, Jesus was tempted for 40 days and 40 nights, that there were 40 days between Jesus's resurrection and ascension, and that Buddha even meditated and fasted for 40 days before reaching samadhi, which is a state of pure concentration, free from the ego and free from emotional processing, a state of bliss, a state of meditative consciousness that elevates one above and beyond the human experience. So it's fascinating when we consider the theme of 40 days and 40 nights, and that, of course, there's many interpretations for this, but when we apply it to Venus, it's allowing us to look at, what do I really want? And that can show up as temptations, pleasures, desires, urges. It can reveal how we want more immediate gratification and that we're impatient. And so this span of time is where we can be in a state of understanding what is really true for me. What do I want to consciously choose, especially in Aries? It's worth noting that the ancients absolutely studied and tracked the stars. And even if those stories aren't openly discussed or published, astrologers have existed across centuries of human experiences and have been known as the wise ones who can calculate what is going on in the heavens. And of course, the three wise men were astrologers and astronomers who tracked the northern star to find where baby Jesus could be found. A lot of these narratives have been retold and a lot of important details have been omitted, but astrology has been a part of storytelling and narratives for eons of time, for centuries of time. And it's really fascinating to make these connections when you can see the patterns and the themes. Later in April, we will have the Easter holiday here in the US, and that is a lunar holiday associated with fertility, ripeness, and abundance that follows the first full moon after the spring equinox. So Easter shifts every year, the holiday moves every year because it's based on the lunar calendar that syncs up with the spring equinox. Now, when Venus is retrograde in Aries, she's going to have her next Venus star point. And we're going to talk about that in the part 2 of this topic, which will be coming out in early March. The Venus star point occurs at 2 degrees of Aries on March 23rd, and this is also a very potent rebirth energy. Now, 2 degrees of Aries being near the very beginning of the full zodiac wheel, and also working with the newness of the spring equinox, spring here in the northern hemisphere, the Aries equinox, I should say, that begins a whole new cycle. So you can see that this Venus is being deeply reprogrammed with new frequencies, new self-awareness, a new sense of self that she's meant to actually sit with and integrate during the full retrograde cycle. So do keep in mind that you'll want to adjust your expectations accordingly. You could be disappointed if something doesn't come about right away or quickly. You could feel like, oh no, it's not happening. Oh no, it's a setback. No, rather what's occurring energetically is that Venus is now taking all this fiery wisdom, self-awareness, and personal understandings back into Pisces. And in Pisces, she's going to continue to have a deep reworking of who she is at a soul level. This is very powerful, divine, feminine energy. This is very big soul wisdom work. This is going into the realms of your higher self, your deep intuitive knowingness, reconnecting with your goddess expressions, your divine feminine state of pureness, and recalibrating to ensure that you're carrying that energy with you in this new cycle. So yes, there will be delays, there will be perceived setbacks, there will be things that fall away and vanish, especially as Venus re-enters Pisces. There's more surrender and letting go. There's more changes and release points that she's being guided to honor and trust. So Venus enters Pisces retrograde March 27th, stations direct April 13th at 24 degrees of Pisces, and then continues back through Pisces until April 30th. So basically all of April, Venus is in Pisces. Then she re-enters Aries in May, where she is really owning her rebirth, her recreation, everything that she's learned about herself. And this is where the energy is going to feel stronger and solid. She's also going to have a beautiful trine to Mars in Leo, who will also have completed his retrograde journey. So I just want to give you that long-term view that May is when there's some powerful connections based on the rebirth and reprogramming that both Venus and Mars have been moving through. Now, I have some previous podcast episodes for you discussing the Mars retrograde, and I will have part 3 of that series on Mars retrograde coming up for you next week. This can help connect some dots around any relationship issues, anything that you're figuring out between the masculine and the feminine. Both are being guided to do personal internal work. Both are in astrology signs that they're uncomfortable in. They're in territory that they need to navigate, but in a new, fresh way. So the divine feminine, the divine masculine are each moving through their own journeys at this time, and they are made to sync up and re-synergize, but they also have to honor what they're focused on and what they need to take care of. Now, you could also relate these to the hero's journey and the heroine's journey, but please note that they are different, and we are each supported in moving through both the hero's journey, which is typically more active, external, and demonstrative, whereas the heroine's journey is internal, intuitive, and spiritual. Both experiences lead us more into ourselves, what we truly want, how we're using our energy. They are both personal journeys of consciousness that test us, that require us to face fears and go into more of ourselves that have previously been unmet. Back in 2013, I wrote a book called The Modern Heroine's Journey of Consciousness. And this is a book that focuses on 11 stages of development that a heroine goes through to know herself in the fullness of her divine feminine expressions, to know herself as she had to separate from her God self, and how she is designed to open up to a greater power as she listens to her soul's whispers and trusts where she needs to go. The Modern Heroine's Journey of Consciousness is about a deeper spiritual growth journey. And I believe that's what this particular Venus retrograde in Aries and Pisces is leading each of us to. It is a personal energy. It is something highly focused on you, on your sense of self, on understanding what you want, what you're about, and reconnecting with needs that perhaps you've ignored, pushed away, or have detached from. Ultimately, this is meant to be self-empowering, but you face fears along the way. And you could face fears around, am I good enough? Can I do this? Do I have what it takes? Am I able to do this on my own? Am I able to create the life I want? The questions can be big, the questions can be personal. So during this particular Venus retrograde in Aries, you are coming back to yourself to be more inquisitive, loving, and understanding. And then as Venus goes back into Pisces, you're returning to your God self that is holding the frequency of who you truly are outside of the human realms, outside of the physical world. And this revisitation to Pisces is going to be very big. People are going to have some huge understandings around what they need to let go of and move away from, what is complete for them. This Venus could even feel like the changes are happening outside of her control because yes, in fact, they are. So we will continue to discuss that in part 2 of this series, Venus retrograde in Aries and Pisces, where we'll look at what she encounters as she moves into Pisces and has those conjunctions once again with Neptune, the North Node, and Saturn. Now keep in mind, we'll also talk about how Venus retrograde is going to be traveling with Mercury retrograde in the same territory of your chart. This is a big deal because Mercury is not only the mind, but it's what you do every day. It's where you go and what you take care of, what you focus on, what's in front of you. And here Venus and Mercury are going to be shuffling around your priorities, what you're focused on, what you get done. And Mercury is actually following Venus's lead. He is realigning with what Venus is going through and then understanding he has to shift and grow as well. And so that is happening in March. Specifically, March 15th is when Mercury stations retrograde at 9 degrees, 35 minutes of Aries. Also, right there, working with the Aries solar eclipse point and traveling back to 26 degrees, 50 minutes of Pisces until April 7th. So simultaneous retrogrades in the personal planets means that parts of our world, our personal worlds and experiences are shifting and changing. So plan accordingly and keep things open. Stay flexible. It won't go as planned. Things will shift and change. People will disappear. Things will disappear, especially in Pisces. There will be no-shows, delays, cancellations. This is going to be an exceptionally big Mercury retrograde because of the involvement with Venus and the involvement of the eclipse energies. If you can clear the calendar, that's best. Commitments might not really happen. Again, things can fall through. If you can hold off on certain appointments, that's great. I know that isn't always the case. That doesn't happen in the real world. But again, stay flexible, expect changes, and know that the bigger picture is that people are really feeling these changes in themselves. They're feeling the shifts. They're feeling different. They're stepping away from what isn't best for them, and they're realigning with more of what they do want and what they do need. So we will need more patience with ourselves and with others, more compassion for others and for ourselves, and the ability to just let it go. Let things go, let it move through you. Don't be overly attached, and just know that it's probably not going to look how you want it to look, because these energies have a lot of movement to them. So to do a quick review, Venus is preparing for her retrograde in Aries in February. She's going to be interacting with the eclipse points that bring about change, shifts, and unexpected developments. She's going to have a powerful reset because of the upcoming Venus star point. She is working simultaneously with Mercury retrograde, realigning, reprogramming, reconsidering everything that Mercury is doing and bringing about. She is the ruler of Uranus and Taurus, that can show you some shocking changes in what you truly desire and want, as well as set you free. Set you free from things you don't want, that you don't want to do anymore, that you don't have energy for. This Venus is learning to temper her desire for immediate results, to tame the flames that are burning and pulsing within, and to become more intentional and wiser, to focus on her self-worth, her self-confidence, and to truly understand what you want and need now, not based on what others expect of you or what they need from you, but to tune in to listen to your real passions, your real desire, and your creative force that will be coming alive, especially in May. As a result of this Venus retrograde, there's going to be a new sense of independence, personal leadership, connecting with more that excites you and motivates you, and also reveals more of what you really want and what you want to create next in your life. So as this Venus retrograde unfolds, try and be patient with yourself and others, give people space and time, open up your expectations, and allow things to move and shift, because that's simply what's going to happen anyways. In part 2 of this series, we'll discuss more about Venus in retrograde as she interacts with the planets in Pisces, and we'll also talk more about the Venus star point that's approaching. This is a big rebirth in the Aries areas of your life, and it's also going to be accentuated by the upcoming Aries solar eclipse again on March 29th at 8 degrees 53 minutes of Aries. So I hope this has given you some good information and knowledge to work with. And if you're interested, do check out my book, The Modern Heroine's Journey of Consciousness, in how to understand the phases and stages of deep change that show up, especially for divine feminine energies. Divine feminine is rebirthing and rising. She is recreating herself, and it's going to be quite empowering here after this retrograde is complete. As always, thank you so much for joining me. I'll be back every Monday and Wednesday for a new podcast episode. Also, be sure to check out my YouTube playlists. I have a lot of free information for you. There's even a Start Here tab, and that Start Here tab shows you more of the basics to look for in your chart. And so that could help you put together any of these pieces, as well as understand more of your natal chart even more. Wishing you a beautiful journey here as we move through the rest of February, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Take good care.